I think about designing D&D dungeons a lot. And I've designed a whole bunch over the past year for my Patreon, and I'm gearing up to design a whole bunch more for next year. I've even written a guidebook detailing my process for creating dungeons. It's called Flick Silverpin's Guide to Exploring Dungeons. Following this guide, you'll answer 15 questions with the help of some advice and random tables, and at the end of it all, you'll have all the information you need to plan out and design an awesome and fun dungeon for your D&D game, or any other fantasy tabletop role-playing game. You can grab the physical version of the zine on my online shop, or you can get the digital version plus a bunch of other adventures and guidebooks from my Patreon. Both of those are linked down in the description. In the guide, I mentioned John 4's excellent 5-room dungeon method as a great template for creating small one-shot dungeons. So in this video, I'm going to explain the 5-room dungeon method and then also how I have expanded it to really fit into my own personal process for creating fun and compelling fantasy dungeons to explore with your players. Okay, so as the name suggests, there are 5 rooms in this dungeon. The first room is the entrance and the guardian room. Basically, the players arrive at the dungeon and must find their way inside. The guard could be a literal guardian, like a guard watching the entrance, or maybe it's a trap or a hidden entrance, something blocking the players from getting in. The second room is a puzzle or role-playing encounter. This room is intended to give the problem-solving players a fun challenge to overcome. It could be a brain puzzle or maybe some fun NPC interactions. The third room is a trick or a setback. I understand this room as a setup for room 4. So it's an encounter that pushes the players forward, but will also make the final confrontation more difficult. The fourth room is the climactic battle or conflict. This is the big boss fight or the reason that the players have ventured into the dungeon. We're going to talk more about interesting encounters in the next video, so make sure you subscribe for that. And the fifth room is the reward, the revelation, or the plot twist. This room can simply contain the treasure that the big boss was protecting, or maybe it contains the location of the next dungeon the players need to explore, or maybe the players discover that by defeating the big boss, they have put an even more sinister series of events into motion. So I think the 5-room dungeon is a fantastic way to lay out a simple dungeon. If you have 2 hours that you're going to be playing and you need 5 rooms to run through, this is a great easy setup for it. I'll have a link down in the description to John 4's blog. It is an amazing, unending supply of knowledge and inspiration. Definitely go check it out. So yeah, the 5-room dungeon is awesome, but what I have found in my process for creating dungeons is that 5 rooms isn't really enough. Especially if you're answering all 15 questions from the Exploring Dungeon Guide. You're gonna have way more ideas than will fit into 5 little rooms. Now the 5 rooms, I feel like I'm saying 5-room dungeon over and over again, but the 5 rooms are intentionally open-ended and broad, and that's so you can kind of mix and match and fit all kinds of different encounters into the rooms to sort of accommodate your players or mix up the design from dungeon to dungeon. But for my process, I'm going to add some rooms. We're going from 5 to 10, but also I want the rooms to be just a little more specific. And what I've found is that when the room descriptions are a little more narrow, it's much easier to come up with ideas and fill in the template, so you know that when you sit down to run your dungeon, the design will be covered and you'll have something good to play. Now for this process, you don't have to use all 10 rooms, and you'll more than likely find that you'll sort of naturally combine rooms here and there. And even though this video is called the 10-room dungeon, I find that I mostly make like 7, 8, or 9-room dungeons. Okay, let's jump into the 10 rooms. First up, Just like before, it's the entrance and the guardian. It's an obstacle to overcome to get into the dungeon. I try to have my guardian telegraph to the players what they can expect to encounter more of inside the dungeon, a little taste of what's to come. Now, I should say the locations 2 through 8 aren't actually numbered, and that's because they're all interchangeable. You can move them around however it fits and works for your dungeon story. In fact, these rooms should all be interconnected with multiple pathways because it's more fun to explore a dungeon that breaks apart and comes together and winds and diverges than it is to just go from room to room in a straight line. So next up is the logical location. This is simply a place that makes sense to be in the dungeon. This is a room that is meant to give story to this place, to make it feel realistic and lived in. So if we're talking a desert temple, maybe that means some sort of well where the denizens get their water, or maybe in a kobold lair, it's the big room where they all sleep when they aren't digging more tunnels or bringing gold to their dragon overlord. Then we have an environmental complication. This could be your standard trap room, like the goblins have set up this trap to keep adventurers out, or it could be something more natural, maybe like a river of lava that's hard to cross, or maybe a room flooded with dark, murky water. Of course, there always has to be a secret entrance or exit, because nothing makes players feel like they've got the upper hand more than bypassing formidable orc sentries that are standing back at the entrance, or finding a convenient way to escape once the alarm has been sounded. Then we have the alternate threat or ally room. This is a big part of how I make my dungeons more interesting. The players are obviously going to meet the people that are living inside the dungeon, but I'm also going to have a third party thrown in to complicate things. So, maybe there's another adventuring party trying to find the same treasure that the players are, or maybe there's another NPC that's trying to stop the cultists, but for a totally different reason than the players. Lots of options for this one, but it's what makes the exploring really, really fun. Next is a room that has some sort of helpful information in it. This can come in many forms, but something that will give the players a leg up while exploring the rest of the dungeon. It could be something like an imprisoned NPC that knows a secret passageway, or maybe the players overhear 2 minions discussing the evil wizard's plans. Then there is the opposite. It's the resource drain room. This is a setback that the players undergo to remind them that they are in a dangerous place. It could be a simple fight, but now the players won't be able to save those healing potions for the final boss. Or maybe the players are betrayed by the ally that they made a few rooms back when they alert the cultists to the player's presence and the alarm goes off. Next up is a secret room. I always like to include a secret reward for my players, something to incentivize them to explore and really pay attention to the hidden clues I leave throughout the dungeon. Maybe it's a magic item that will help them in the final battle, or maybe it's a hidden passage for bypassing the room full of skeletons. Then, just like rooms 4 and 5 in the 5-room dungeon, we have rooms 9 and 10, the big battle or the final conflict, and the reward. Now, I think one of these rooms should be why the players are exploring this dungeon in the first place. Are they here to defeat the undead warlock who's turning the villagers into zombies? Or maybe they simply want the treasure inside the old king's tomb. Of course, the climactic final battle should be appropriately epic, so your players feel like heroes, and the treasure should make sense for why it's here. Sure, the dragon loves to hoard gold, but why are there all these charred weapons and pieces of armor laying around? And just like in the 5-room dungeon method, including a revelation or a plot twist in the final room is a great way to continue the story. You know, maybe the players find a map in the old king's tomb that leads them to an even greater treasure. Or maybe the demon that the undead warlock was trying to summon is released and teleports away to cause havoc and destruction elsewhere. You know, the goal here is to create a believable dungeon that is also fun and exciting for the players to explore. You know, it should feel like a place that would exist even if the players weren't here. But at the same time, it should be compelling and challenging to traverse and explore. Now, the final 2 pages of the Exploring Dungeons guidebook has a dungeon in it that acts as a great example for the 10-room dungeon, or in this case, 9 rooms because I combined rooms 9 and 10 together. Again, if you'd like to pick up a copy of Flick Silverpin's Exploring Dungeons, or if you'd like to support this channel, check out my online shop or my Patreon. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. See ya!